Hey guys, it's SRC Reptiles, and today we're making the second part of the Crested Gecko babies. So this is the mid-tier, like I mentioned in the previous video. So this is going to show all of the mid-tier babies when it comes to age. The last ones that you guys will get to see in the next video will be the 5 older ones, which are going to be those 4 there, and then there's one up there in that blue container. So, this here is Pumpkin. Pumpkin is the only one that I am currently thinking about holding back that is from Harmony and Mischief. It was kind of a tie between Pumpkin and Quibbler, and if Quibbler is fired up today, you'll get to see why, because Quibbler is a really nice looking gecko. But I really loved the coverage that Pumpkin has. Oh, Pumpkin is sometimes a little jumpy when I am talking. So, here's what Pumpkin looks like, and while I do not think Pumpkin's going to be a tricolor, he does, or she, whichever, I'm not really sure on the gender yet. They do have a lot of drip pattern. They are obviously an extreme harlequin. I wouldn't really consider there to be any tricolor in there because there is not enough white to orange ratio to be a tricolor. Even low expression, there's just not enough. I would maybe say portholes with some of these here, but otherwise, yeah, so this one is just an extreme harlequin. Now remember, for it to be a tricolor, it has to be even amounts of orange to white. So you can see on this side there's complete connection between the back, or the dorsal, and the lateral pattern. So I just really love how this one's looking at this age. And this one was hatched out in May, so not even a year yet, and he or she is already covered in patterns. So I cannot wait to see what this one looks like. The back pattern, or the dorsal, reminds me a lot of how Mischief looks. So not so much an organized pinstriping, but just more an all-over pattern that most of the time will connect to the sides when it comes to the pattern continuing off of the laterals and onto the dorsal. For crest, not like the most amazing looking, but not the worst. So that's the one thing that will make or break whether or not I keep this one for the future. Is once this one reaches about a year and a half, I will decide then if I want to keep it or if I want to let it go. So this one will be on hold for now until he or she is old enough for me to make that decision. If it's a female, I'm guaranteed going to keep it, but I have so many that are coming out males that I'm really hoping that it does not turn out to be a male. So that's just my one thing, that I'm just so tired of getting a whole bunch of boys. So I really hope that one of the ones I want to keep turns out to be a girl. Pumpkin obviously has a lot of energy and does not want to get off my hand. There we go. So anyway, this is Pumpkin, and next I will show whoever is reachable. I am feeding them as well today, so like the other day when I was making a video, they are going to be getting fed. So I'll feed this one and then we'll pick who's next after that. Okay guys, so here is Quibbler. So this is the one that I was thinking about keeping before Pumpkin came along. And you can see that while he is still nice looking, Pumpkin obviously is just covered with pattern. And I did, of course, like, and the one thing that I still like about Quibbler is he has a pretty decent looking crest. His back pattern is nice. He does have a little bit of drippy, but I just really like the vibrancy of his orange pattern. And yes, that could potentially begin to fade, because as you'll see with Little Rascal when we go to see the older ones, he went from being a really nice deep orange to almost like a brownish orange now. And it's not as vibrant, but he still is pretty looking in his own way. But he's one of the ones that is for sale right now, which sadly I am not going to be doing shipping for quite a while, honestly, just because of the fact that I'm just kind of paranoid about how packages are treated after seeing videos and stuff in the recent past about how some people that are delivering packages literally just throw them onto people's porches, and I really would just be devastated if someone ended up getting one of my geckos like dead or anything like that. And I know that every day people ship geckos through the mail, no issues, but I'm just not wanting to take that chance at the current time. I have all of the supplies on hand for it, but I just don't want to do it right now. So that is why my geckos are not currently going to be available for shipping. And I do live in Kansas, so I'm just doing local sales. So anyway, back to the geckos. So He has a few white portholes, nothing too crazy when it comes to white patterning. His back pattern looks a lot like Mischief's, just not as messy as Pumpkin's. And obviously you can see that he is a lot more, he or she I should say, a lot more laid back than Pumpkin. Quibbler is older than Pumpkin is, so this is one of the few reasons, but he also just has a laid back demeanor. So whoever gets him, he will make a good pet or a breeder, whichever they're going to use them for. But Quibbler is one of the ones that I will be selling. Even if Quibbler turned out to be a female, I still think I'd probably sell her just because I'm wanting to stick with tricoloreds, and the only reason I'm even keeping Pumpkin, if Pumpkin turns out to be a girl, is just because of all of that pattern that Pumpkin has versus Quibbler. Now, obviously, Quibbler still would be considered an extreme Harlequin because the pattern goes above the mid-laterals, and there is a little bit, of course, drippy, and even geckos that are not extreme can have drippy pattern. But yeah, this here is Quibbler. And I haven't been showing when they've been hatching because I kind of haven't been thinking about it. Also, the stickers I have on here for them, I didn't think about the fact that they were paper stickers, so the water from misting has really washed out some of the bottom. But Quibbler hatched out in March on the 25th, or January, February, March, yeah. And Pumpkin over there was the 14th of May. So Pumpkin is just a few months younger than Quibbler. Quibbler just is a little bit more mature acting when it comes to geckos. So, anyway, that is Quibbler. I'm going to probably show you Uno next, which is this baby over here. Unless Trustee, I think, might possibly come next, just depending on whoever I can reach easiest. And we have Magma just slowly creeping up and watching. And as you can see, he loves to step in his food and walk all over the glass. Because as you look over here, all that's there with Ember, just a little poo. You look over here with Magma, 1,000 footsteps of food. So, yeah, some geckos are not very clean when it comes to eating. And then over here, Mischief is like, or not, yeah, Mischief is like creeping up. He is like slowly walking up to see what's going on because the light's on in the room. Some of the geckos will be awake during the day because it is 12:10 in the afternoon. And I know that most of the time you want to feed the babies in the evening, but I have to go to bed early for work, so that's not going to happen. So I'm just feeding them in the afternoon. Okay guys, so this here is Trustee. And Trustee, I have not seen fire up in eons, so this is about as dark as I have seen him or her for like 3 or 4 months. It's very odd. Trustee is almost always fired down, never fired up, which yes, that is a good indicator that the gecko is comfortable with you, because most of the time when a gecko is fired down, it means that they are relaxed or in a comfortable state. When they're fired up, it normally means that they are like scared, frightened, surprised, something like that. Now, sometimes they'll fire up just to fire up. Sometimes, like to help blend in with their surroundings, they will be darker versus fired down. Like, there's a whole bunch of different situations. Doesn't always mean that they're, scared when they're fired up, but normally if they're in stressful situations, it does cause that to happen. Now, sometimes you can force a fire up by having them in a small container in a dark room and you have misted them with water. I think temperature-wise has something to do with it as well sometimes, which is interesting. Because obviously, misting them with room temperature water most of the time does cause them to fire up. So it's really interesting because I normally will use that trick when I am trying to take photos of them to get them at their true state so people can really see what they look like when they're fired up. So Trustee here is borderline extreme Harlequin, but not quite. So Trustee has a very nice crest. He or she looks a lot like his mom. I'm just going to say him right now. I don't know what it is with all of them wanting to just climb into my hand. Like, we're not going to be doing that right now. But there is a little bit of pattern that goes above the mid-laterals, but in my personal opinion, not enough really to be considered an extreme. Some people might say that though, so it's kind of just what you think, honestly. But I'm just probably going to sell Trustee when he is for sale as just a plain old Harlequin. I am hoping that he turns out to look a lot like his mom with that pretty orange color that she had. But it's interesting because he looks nothing like her when it comes to like the base color. Because she was more of a kind of reddish, deep brown, as we're Trustee here. Base color, is definitely just like a chocolate. Very soft, light chocolate color, so. Trusty, nothing too crazy going on. Has pin dashing. Has a decent crest. But yeah, not really the most like, wow, amazing gecko, but Trusty was the funny one that when I was trying to weigh him as a baby, that he opened his mouth and made a noise at me because he was offended that I was wanting him to sit still on the scales. And I'll put that picture in, including the one that I added eyebrows to as well, because my boyfriend thought it'd be funny for me to draw on eyebrows, and it turned out quite hilarious. So, not going to hold Trusty or video Trusty too much longer. We're going to get right to feeding because he is being very squirmy, which is unlike him because normally he's really good to sit still. So, anyway, that there is Trusty, and I was going to do Uno next, but I did not spot him immediately, so I was like, I'm probably going to have to dig him out from paper towel or something, because they like to get under their paper towel in the bottom there. So anyway, again, this is Trusty, and I'll show real quick, he was hatched out on the 5th of May. Where you going? Get back over here. So anyway, we will go on to one of the next babies, which will be either Uno or Pop-Tart. Okay guys, so this here is little Uno. Uno was hatched out in June, so I'll get him to turn. Uno is the one that I'm very sad about, because his patterns are nice, and he has some like white portholes and some white spotting and stuff like that going on. Nothing to be really considered even low expression tricolor, so it is a Harlequin. But the frosted tips on his crest, why couldn't have one of the ones I wanted to keep got the frosted tips? Like, they're so nice, and his crest looks pretty decent. You can see there's no gap between the eye and the crest. There's just an onward full motion of attachment between the crest and where the eye crests start. So it's just like, he got such a nice crest, and I don't even want to keep him. So Uno is just kind of like, makes me sad, because Uno's such a nice looking crest. And then, you know, his patterns are just regular, kind of. So, Uno is, like I said, a Harlequin with portholes. And there is a teeny tiny little bit of white developing down at the bottom, so maybe he'll become a low expression tricolor. Either way, not keeping this one. Got pin dashing on there. Very similar pattern to what Mischief has. Because Harmony just had a solid dorsal with, like, some spots and stuff, so. But yeah, so this is what Uno looks like. I like Uno because he's not super duper jumpy. Uno is a single egg, so when his egg was laid, there was only one, there was not two, so that's why he has his name. And if you watched the previous video, like I put in the, I put text on the photo or on the image while it was playing the video, but I will say that neither of Blaze's eggs made it. I obviously talked about how one had made it in that video, but the second one didn't either. Just in case you did not read that text if you were just listening versus watching, which is obviously no big deal. I really don't care. But, yeah, the second egg started to sweat, and nothing was happening. I had candled it the day before, so day 95 is when the egg started sweating, which normally indicates that it's going to hatch. But, obviously nothing was happening. There was no movement at all in the egg when I had candled it the day before. So when I cut it open, very carefully, I used one of my really sharp X-Acto blades that I have for cutting paper and stuff like that. There was no movement at all when I got it open. The baby was definitely underdeveloped, so I'm thinking for some reason at some stage it stopped developing and it just did not make it. I'm not really entirely sure what causes that, because the temperature has been the same consistently. The humidity for the eggs has been the same. Something genetically, I think, is probably what caused that to happen, since both eggs did not make it. There was a little bit of undercalcification of the egg itself, so maybe that had something to do with what was going on with the babies. I'm not really sure. Either way, it was a little sad. Obviously, it's not real enjoyable to lose babies at all. There is still 4 eggs that are looking perfect. They look really nice. They're developing well, because you can kind of tell by watching them over the course of from laying till ready to hatch that the eggs are starting to swell and grow in girth. So that's always a good sign. These eggs look perfectly fine. There's no issues with them at all compared to the other ones, so I'm hoping that we will have successful hatchings of those 4. I believe 2 of them are at day 33, and I believe the other ones are at day 65, so it will be a little bit before they hatch. Probably about a month for the ones that are at day 65, but either way, I'm hopeful that they will make it. It's very odd that Blaze had this happen, because Ember was the only one I've ever had this issue with. She obviously has been retired. She was only bred once. Blaze, she's going to be retired this year, as is Magma, because they're both 7.5 years old. So I'm not really sure when people normally retire their animals, but that seems like a pretty decent age to retire them at. So they aren't going to be being bred anymore. The main focus will be next year on Snickers and Twix. If I breed Indigo with Twix, then I might, but it's the main focus is going to be on him and Snickers. So anyway, back to talking about Uno. This again is Uno. I'm just going to show him a little bit more one more time, and then we're going to move on to the next baby after I get this little guy fed. So there is Uno. Anyway, this here is our last baby we get to see today. This is Poptart. So what's interesting in each age tier of the youngest, the middle youngest, and then the oldest babies, there is one bicolor. It's really interesting. So Poptart is the bicolor of this age group, has white portholes, and is starting to get a really nice darker dorsal, kind of similar to what Serenity has when he is fired up. So kind of curious to see if Poptart's going to look pretty similar to Serenity, only with having more white portholes. Serenity is pretty laid back. Or not Serenity, sorry, I'm used to saying Serenity. Poptart is pretty laid back, as you can see. Normally is not running around too much. Has a decent crest. Nothing to, like, brag about, but it's decent. It's not the worst thing ever. Has a decent amount of... Actually, not really. This one has what appears to be the furry trait. So that's when there is little tiny bumps that stick up other than where the crest is supposed to be, so you can kind of see them here along the body. So that would most likely come from Mischief's side of the family, because Harmony didn't have any of that. But that doesn't mean that it's not carried in her side of the family, because I didn't know her lineage. But anyway, you can see if he'll stop moving. Now normally the furry trait kind of happens around this part of the crest right here. And it is kind of a little noticeable, but nothing too crazy. I do have a baby that has quite a bit of like furriness going on around that area. It kind of looks more like a scruff. Like it literally bunches up in this area because there's so much crest spikes like collected in that one spot. So it's an interesting trait. Some are a little bit more extreme than others. Some are like this where it's just little extra bumps and stuff where the pinstriping would be. But, yeah, so this is Poptart. Nothing too, like, wow, amazing. Obviously, Poptart is pretty in his own right. Bicolors are just not really what I was looking for, so obviously one of the reasons that I sold Harmony, aside from her inconsistent egg laying, was the randomness of her babies. So, I think we only got 2 tricoloreds out of the entire pairing, and obviously Mischief has only tricoloreds on his line, or on his side of his family. Obviously Magma is a blonde Harlequin, but both his parents had tricolor in them, and a lot of his siblings were tricolors, so that's why I say that Mischief has tricolor on that side of his family. And then of course his mom is a tri, and she came from a tricolor pinstripe group from Pangea. So from Mischief's side, I know what's going on, but with Harmony, this definitely came from her side, because he doesn't have anybody in his lineage that's a bicolor, or that shows bicolor when bred, so it's just interesting. Anyway, guys, that is all of the babies. Hopefully you enjoyed getting to see the mid-tier when it came to age-wise. Obviously, a lot of them are doing really well, growing perfect, and, oh, are you getting scared all of a sudden? I'm sorry. And for the most part, all of them have really developed a lot, aside from guys like this, where, I mean, there's really not much pattern to develop. There's just the portholes, pretty much. And then the color will most of the time just get deeper as he gets older, as you can see how the dorsal especially is a really nice deep chocolate. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel. It always encourages me to make more videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and have a good rest of your day.